This is your First Alert Weather Breakdown, a deep dive into how weather works with meteorologist Evan Thomason.
Heyo, welcome on. I'm meteorologist Evan Thomason here at the First Alert Weather Center with CJ Cartledge. Guys, it's Tuesday. You know what that means.
Yes, it is. Well, hey, everybody. How y'all doing? Glad to be back on the show. Glad to be back on here talking about the nice weather and a lot of things that are going on in the Gulf of Mexico right now.
Oh, man. It's back to the hurricane season. Also, thanks for those of you joining on Facebook as well. We don't do this often on Facebook. We kind of have to, honestly, in this scenario, or we feel compelled to, I guess, so to speak, especially with a major hurricane looming on in the Gulf of Mexico that has already made a number of historic feats.
Yeah, it has been produced. It has pretty much exploded through the past 48 hours here, becoming a Category 5 just yesterday morning, as of around yesterday's morning's update, right? And then and it has, like, through the day, it has become actually the fifth most intense hurricane in the Atlantic Basin ever since the recording of these hurricanes here in the Atlantic Basin. So that is definitely a large feat associated with this storm.
Yeah, it's very impressive and quite contradictory to our own weather locally. Nothing but sunshine and rainbows.
Yes, very, very contradictory, actually. Skycam shows pretty much nothing on the in the skies and actually around the Arctic here, as we're dealing with a lot of high pressure pushing away the remainder of any cloud cover that we have here. You may see one or two clouds out there, but you won't see much. You'll be seeing a lot of that sunshine.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty about the hurricane, my goodness. When I walked into work yesterday, it was a Cat 1. When I left work, it was a Cat 4 on the brink of a Cat 5. In a short span of 8 hours. Even then, I think there was 2 advisories back-to-back where it went from 1 to 2 to 3, and then immediately to like 4 an hour later. It was ridiculous.
That's insane progression, mainly due to those very, very warm Gulf of Mexico waters there that are still near record-breaking temperatures as of right now, as it has been throughout this entire season.
I always love to call it the hot tub of Mexico for a reason. Yeah, you got that right. All right, so here's our docket for today. It's simple. It's what we've been talking about. It's on one side, it's our local Arctic sunny forecast, although we are talking about a change in temperature. I will say that, so that'll be great to have outside here for the day today, and honestly, next few days too. Meanwhile, Hurricane Milton will go all into that. Now, if you guys have any questions during this whole segment, you can ask it to us. You can type us in the chat on both Facebook and YouTube. That's how we interact with you guys live. It's how I'm not just talking to you, but you guys are talking back to me. This is a conversation.
Yes, it definitely is, and we'll answer any questions that you may have about Milton, about the Arctic. So we're not expecting much here in the Arctic, but if you have any questions about when the next bit of rainfall is coming, we'll try to answer that as best as we can too, but yeah, it's pretty far out.
Yeah. This kind of platform is it's the best time to ask it, honestly, is on this kind of platform. Again, we can't really do this much during the newscast. We have our own set thing to tell you, and it doesn't go much beyond that, but here we get to be a little more, I wouldn't say, there's nothing to be relaxed about this hurricane, but a little more laid-back setting, so to speak, and just relax. Speaking of relaxing, let's get into the local forecast first before we get into the hurricane. And then after the hurricane, I promise you, we will answer all your questions at the end, because I know some of you might be already asking questions on our Facebook stream. In fact, we already have one comment already on, on YouTube. So, so we're hanging around with beautiful sunshine over the next couple of days, which will be nice. All right, let's get into the local forecast first. Then we'll get into the hurricanes. Then we'll answer all your questions on both YouTube and Facebook as well. So let's get straight into it. Bam. So main story here for today is not just the sunshine, but we do have a change to the forecast. It's much cooler across the Arctic. You woke up this morning, we had temperatures down to the 40s, actually.
40s?
40s in some portions of southwestern Arkansas. The majority of us only reached down to the 50s. But it was nice, and I must say this lasts on for the next several mornings too, and with low humidity days, that'll be nice for everybody, including myself. But boy, that sunshine is going absolutely nowhere at all. I don't know if you looked at the 7-day forecast. It's quite barren. We'll get to that in just a moment. But look at the humidity levels in throughout the work week. I mean, not only is it comfortable today, it stays that way throughout most of the next couple of days.
Yeah, the slight humidity heading into the weekend, but it's not going to feel like anything. It's not going to feel much of a difference. Sunshine will still be not going anywhere, staying pretty stagnant, and we'll be feeling mainly comfortable and a little bit warm out there heading into our weekend, actually.
Yeah, just a little bit warmer. Picking back up into some sunshine. Actually, the temperatures kind of warm up each and every day after today, just by a little bit. But today's the main cool down you've been looking forward to. So let's go across everywhere. Let's go to Stamps, 82 degrees. Got 83 in for Texarkana. Also got 83 for Vivian, 83 in Atlanta, 83 also for Broken Bow, too. And for Eastern Texas, a lot of similar temperatures all around.
Yep, 87 near Henderson seems to be the warmest portions around the area, as per usual. 82 near Carthage and Center, 85 near Chirano and Nacogdoches, and over in northwest Louisiana, we're looking at similar temperatures to that, as you can see, mainly in the lower 80s. Some of us may reach into the upper 80s, but mostly everywhere around the area will be mostly cool and dry and calm around the Arklatex.
Yep, absolutely. That'll be great to enjoy here locally. Again, here's that warm-up that's coming over the next several days. So highs in the lower 80s here for today, mid-80s for tomorrow. Get into the upper 80s, yeah, again for Thursday and Friday. But I want to stress again that humidity map. There's not much of it. I think that's going to be the big difference maker moving on throughout the rest of the work week, even though we are still, yes, increasing the temperatures by a little bit each and every day.
And we're sitting right at the average high for today. If we hit the average high, 83, we're sitting right at that average, but temperatures are expected to reach back above average heading through the rest of the work week and into next weekend, possibly into the next work week as well.
I must say, I'm looking forward to getting back the highs into the 70s whenever that happens. We'll see.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like we do have another cold front actually coming next work week as well, after this coming weekend with those highs into the lower 90s. All right, so future track, I mean, not only is it dry, but, I mean, we don't have any cloud cover. I think that's the thing I've been stressing on every one of my newscasts is it's not just the sake of no wet weather, it's just no cloud cover. You have no protection from the sun at all.
Not at all. Definitely need to wear that sunscreen and bring out those shades once again for the rest of the 7 days that are coming up. As you can see, sunny icons all around. Rain chances slim to none. If you like rain or if you need rain for those plants, sorry, you will need to water them a little bit extra throughout this week, or at least the next 7 days, because even though it will be comfortable out there, it will not be wet at all.
Yeah, I will say some things to at least look forward to. Again, today's high, only 83 degrees. Lows are going to be staying in the 50s and for the next several mornings, all the way up into Saturday morning. So that's at least going to hang with us throughout your entire work week. And there we see the hint of the cool down here starting in the next work week, Monday, high of 89 degrees. All right. So local forecasts looking
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Can't complain too much about it. It gets a little toasty in for the rest of the week heading into next weekend, but not terrible at all, especially compared to the hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Thankfully, that's not coming towards the Arklatex. Let's stress that out first, but we'll have more details on that coming up after a break. We're going to go all into it after this. Stick with us. All right, welcome on back to KSLA News 12. So we went through the good news for our forecast here on First Alert Weather Breakdown, but I know everybody's here kind of for the bad news. Obviously, we always want to help people out in times of need and things like that, and that's what we do here for today. Again, Hurricane Milton, major hurricane. It is in the Arklatex. It's not coming towards the Arklatex. Yes. Let me say that twice for the people in the back. It is not coming towards the Arklatex. Maybe a third time to, ensure that what I'm saying is now correct.
Right.
It is not coming towards the Arklatex. All right.
Still early in the week, guys. Just bear some, it's okay. It's all right.
Bear with us.
It's not coming towards us. It's going mainly towards Florida, posing a major threat to areas like Tampa and everywhere on the western coastlines of Florida. We're seeing storm surge totals possibly up to 10 to 15 inches, or 10 to 15 feet.
That's wild.
Not inches, feet of storm surge, mainly on the coastal areas. So it is best to, most officials, most government officials are saying to evacuate. If you have any loved ones or friends out there, tell them to either evacuate or move more inland. That is where the lesser flood threats are, lesser storm surge threats are, and the higher winds are possibly expected to move more into Tampa. Tampa's at the largest threat associated with this storm as of right now. What do you think?
There's lots of concerns with the wind as well. I will say that too. It's going to be a major hurricane, and I will say it's hit Ian. Or, excuse me, not hit Ian. Ian hit Fort Myers about two years ago. Right. And then we already had Helene earlier this year hit the Big Bend. But in between the two, right on top of Tampa and kind of the Tampa metro, haven't had a storm hit like that certain area in years, especially as a major hurricane. So
yeah, it's definitely something to watch over the next few days for sure.
All right, so we got your update here for what is going on. Let's look at the big picture of things before we get into specifics. So to speak. So we have our cold front here today, and kind of just like Helene, I don't know if you remember back from Helene, a cold front swept through the Arklatex, gave us a rain. You remember that was our last measurable rainfall here in the Arklatex, was from that cold front that pushed Helene off to our east.
Wow.
Look what is again happening in this picture. It is another cold front that just swept through the Arklatex that's pushing and helping to usher the hurricane basically due northeast right along that line onto the Florida peninsula. So
and thankfully, it's not moving in a direction similar to how Helene was, where it was mainly moving north and eastward. This is helping. The cold front is actually helping Milton to push more eastward rather than north and eastward as it is moving right now.
Yeah, so Milton is most likely, unfortunately, going to grow to a Cat 5 here for today. I think it will be a Cat 3 at landfall. I think some of that has to deal with, we'll get into the future track on that in just a moment. I think some of that weakening has to deal with some of the shearing by the cold front kind of interacting with it a little bit more. But one last thing I want to mention on this graphic, though, is look at the rest of the United States. Do you see any wet weather, any cloud cover? I mean, it is all focused almost in one centralized location here for the most part.
Exactly. And then Florida's already getting some of these rain showers and cloud cover from this storm, but pretty much across the entire United States, it's mostly dry with not much really going on. As you can see off to the west, maybe a few rain showers here, but here in the Arklatex, we're not dealing with anything right now. Maybe a little bit of some clouds, maybe a few puffy clouds or so, but as you can see here, just nothing.
It has been very, very barren, to say the least. All right, let's get a good look. I believe that the latest update, that was earlier this morning. So here, heading into later on today, that was earlier this morning when it had those peak winds. Let's get you up to speed here. So this will still be a Cat 4. It is currently a Cat 4, I should say. It's moving up north and east ever so steadily, and by this evening, looks like it's going to maintain its Cat 4 status, continue to be a major hurricane pretty much all the way up unto landfall, which is when it kind of becomes a Cat 3, honestly. So, yeah. Also, notice the timing, too. Landfall right around midnight.
Midnight on Wednesday.
Yeah.
As you can see, and as of right now, it looks to make a direct hit or possibly move even northward or shift northward to Tampa. And if it shifts northward, that's bad news for Tampa.
We always say this with severe weather. It's always terrible if you can't see it. It's even worse if you can't see it, honestly,
Right.
and can't see everything coming. So yeah, this is going to be a major landfall impact. Somewhere between, look at our future tracks, kind of stopped right around midnight again. Wednesday heading into early Thursday morning. This will cross the state of Florida before finally not being an issue anymore. But notice how it still maintains its hurricane status all the way through the Florida Peninsula. That maintains those wind speeds way up there as well.
Right. Right, in the middle, once it hits the middle of Florida near Orlando, it's still 100-mile-per-hour sustained winds in the middle of the storm, the central part of the storm. It may lose its eye of the storm by then, but once it moves over to the eastern side of the peninsula, it would still possibly remain a Category 1 storm, still a pretty strong storm.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing I want to talk about this before we answer any questions is rainfall totals. This just gives you another big picture of how we're in the desert here locally in the Arklatex with no rain coming. This is for the next 7 days, keep in mind you as well.
Right.
Meanwhile, in Florida, it's going to be an absolute washout.
Yes.
Starting in northern Florida, right around Tallahassee. The peak of the rain goes right from Tampa up through Orlando there. And up into, I believe that's Daytona and Melbourne, kind of areas just south of Jacksonville, where you see in northeast Florida. And thankfully, Miami looks like it's on the better end of this, on the southeastern tip of the peninsula. But still, I mean, you're looking at, what, 5 to 7 inches of rain on top of the storm surge you were mentioning.
Exactly. There's already tropical storm warnings and maybe some hurricane watches on the east side of the Florida peninsula there, but there's definitely some hurricane warnings for most of our western coastlines of Florida. I had to find the words there, but definitely a lot of rain expected, as you can see by the yellow. That is that 15-inch mark just off the coastlines of western Florida, and nearly 10 inches possible for the next 7 days, or associated with this storm through the middle of Florida.
I feel for them. That's all I can say.
Definitely.
Bad.
Definitely send our thoughts and prayers to everyone that's in the path. If you did not evacuate, try to make sure to move more inland if you can, because most people are telling everyone to get out of the way of this storm, mainly because of the storm surge that is possible and how strong it's going to be even when it makes landfall. It's still expected to be a Category 3 storm.
Even then, you remember what happened in western edge of North Carolina with Helene?
Yeah, exactly. If it moves more inland, it can still produce that effect to it as it did if it was off of land.
Man, flooding is ridiculous. Water is powerful at the end of the day. This is what we do. Try to keep you guys weather aware every single time. All right, so that's our forecast for the hurricane. Coming up next, we're going to answer any viewer questions, and we'll wrap up this episode and look forward to tomorrow, which we'll probably talk about Helene again as it inches closer onto the Florida coastline. Again, this is a historic, powerful storm. Again, we'll answer questions and recap this episode after this. Stick with us one more time. All right, welcome back to KSLA News 12 First Alert Weather Breakdown. CJ, one more time with this hurricane before we get into questions. I just want to stress that how historic and how powerful the storm has been. I guess the historic statistics that comes to mind for me is that the pressure is below 900 millibars. If you saw that,
900.
not
Like at its
currently,
peak.
at its peak yesterday, reached below 900 millibars. It's still very intense, regardless, still even now.
Right.
Believe with how powerful and how low its pressure was, because that's all hurricanes are, is huge low pressure systems.
Exactly.
Enormous ones. It, I think, had the lowest pressure on record since 2005 with Wilma and Rita.
Wow. Wilma's was what ranked the most intense hurricane ever in the Atlantic Basin, wasn't it?
Yep.
The most intense. So it was compared to one of the most intense ones ever in the Atlantic. In the Atlantic, just to make sure there possibly have been greater and more intense hurricanes out in the Pacific or other areas of the world. But here in the Atlantic, I've heard that this was the fifth most intense hurricane in the Atlantic. This one right here, Milton.
Yep.
And it reached 897 millibars. And just to clarify, most hurricanes do not even reach below, what, 920s? The 920s?
I go 950.
Yeah.
Like, if you're talking about just a typical Cat 1, Cat 2, that usually has millibars somewhere around 970, 980.
Right. That's
Major hurricanes usually anywhere below 950. 950.
950.
Just so you know, a typical low pressure system is barely below 1,000.
Exactly. It's around 1,000. That's like a regular thunderstorm.
yeah.
You know? Mid-latitude cyclone, something like that. But
It's,
for something that of this caliber to get below, if its central pressure below 900 millibars, is definitely something to be ranked among the highest and most intense storms ever recorded in the Atlantic Ocean or in the Gulf of Mexico, actually. And it formed pretty much within 24 hours. 24 hours, I believe the Sunday afternoon update, it was a tropical storm. And by yesterday morning, it was already on Cat 5, almost reaching Cat 5 strength, and it was still increasing in strength after it reached that Category 5 status. And it reached around 180 miles per hour at its peak. Right now, it is maybe around 155 miles per hour. Is that last time I checked?
I think it went down to 145.
145?
Actually, but it's meandering around there. I think last check was 150. And that was the last update, which was at 10 a.m. Central Time. Just so you know, it's now 10:53 at the time of this recording. So it's 50 minutes ago, but they usually only update every 3 hours or so.
Every 3 hours, yeah. So that's definitely a very, very strong storm. 150 miles an hour. It's still 150 miles an hour, whether you say it differently or it's still 150 miles an hour. It's mainly around the eye wall, though. That is where the strongest winds are. On the outer bands of it, and maybe it's tropical storm level or Category 1 level winds, maybe 70 to 90 miles per hour. Wind gusts maybe even higher than that.
Yeah.
So definitely still a very, very strong storm. It should be taken very, very seriously. If you have any loved ones in those areas that are in the path, make sure to tell them to either evacuate if they can or try to move as far inland as they can as well.
CJ's got the right message. Real quick, I want to get to our comments. Thank you guys for waiting so much. Mary, hi. Will our Estero, I believe that's how you pronounce that, in Lee County be affected at all? And if so, how much water will they get after the hurricane? Great question. Thank you very much for asking. These are the kind of questions we answer, just so you know. You can ask anything and everything. I had to look up where Estero is, because not from Florida, around. It's just south of Fort Myers.
Okay.
So you get a little picture. I'm showing CJ on my phone here.
Got you.
So yeah, just a little south of Fort Myers. So we can go back into our rainfall totals, because it said how much rainfall. I think storm surge on the southern end, because I know the peak of it's 10 to 15 feet. But that's mainly in between Tampa, Sarasota.
Right.
I don't think it goes as far down as Fort Myers, but I think they're still expecting like 5 feet?
Yeah, maybe 3 to 5 feet of storm surge, which is still 3 to 5 feet, you know. We're not as tall. We're around between 5 and 6 feet, so maybe as tall as us, but definitely a concern for sure if you're on the coastlines near Fort Myers.
Still impressive regardless. I'm just pulling up the rainfall totals. I will let you guys look actually at that at the same time we are. So that is Tampa getting the peak of the rainfall. And then
That's
this
between-
is Fort Myers around right here. So Estero's kind of, I think it's right before, I think that's I-75 curves to the right over towards Miami. So you're kind of lingering right on the edge there because you're on the southern end of the core, so to speak. I would probably say it's going to depend, probably based on a lot of things, whether especially you're on a fine line of rainfall. It's going to depend on if the core moves a little bit south, if it moves a little bit north in that trajectory of the forecast cone. That's the reason why we have that in the first place. But you're still getting a good 3 to 4 inches of rainfall, and you said 5 feet of storm surge. I think if you're right on the coastline, that still means to evacuate or find something else. Personally, at all. So I wish you best of luck, honestly, there.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like that they may be on the east side or the right side of that storm, so they could also be getting some potential severe weather associated with this storm as well as the higher storm surge, because the winds will be moving from the water into land on that side.
Getting the worst of the impacts. And the last thing I'll say is something we haven't talked about yet, is kind of isolated tornado threat. It's not huge. It usually isn't with tropical systems, but they are certainly possible.
Certainly possible.
That's the kind of phrasing I would use with that.
Yes, so, for sure. And they're most likely short-lived as well. You won't see many, if any at all, very powerful tornadoes. Most of them will probably be the range of EF0 to EF2 at the highest. I know that we saw that here in the Architects with Beryl. Highest we saw was EF2 with the multitude of tornado warnings that we got. But the tornadoes are definitely possible, and they'll most likely be short-lived if they do occur.
Absolutely. So thank you for your question, Mary. I hope that answers your question. You can confirm in the chat if it does. If you have anything else to add or ask, always let us know. Again, this is a conversation. Keisha on our Facebook, meanwhile, said this is not normal. It absolutely isn't. I mean, we went into some of the records, and we already broke with the storm in itself. It isn't. Quite simply put, Helene was kind of Helene was like a typical major hurricane, if you can call one typical, honestly. Yeah. This one is a monster.
This one,
monster.
A monster for sure, especially with the way how it exploded over 24 hours and how powerful it still is, even as it brushed past the Yucatan Peninsula just last night or yesterday afternoon. It still remains a major storm, and it will possibly remain a major storm even as it makes landfall into the western coast of Florida.
Yep. All right, so I don't see any other chats from Facebook or YouTube here for the moment, so we'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. If you have a comment here real quick, I'll give you another minute to ask one, but for now, we'll wrap things up. For those of you just joining us kind of for the first time, we do other things besides talk about hurricanes whenever there's not hurricanes around, I promise you. You can send us topics to talk about. On Monday, for yesterday, we talked about way long-range forecasts. What can you expect beyond your typical 12-day forecast and 7-day forecast that you see in a newscast? You can send us science explainers. How does a tornado happen? What the heck is wind shear? What are you talking about when you mean isolated and scattered? CJ explained that a few weeks back, but we can always re-explain things again. I love doing that. Love explaining anything and everything about weather. So yeah, weather breakdown at KSLA.com. That's where you email us your suggestions for topics, and we talk about them live here at 10:30 on KSLA.com on a live stream, and typically only on YouTube as well. You can also message us on Facebook too. We're streaming every single weekday at 10:30. Tomorrow we'll be probably going over Milton again. It's most likely going to make landfall between Wednesday and Thursday's episodes. We'll at least put it on again for our exclusive content, going fully over it again here for tomorrow, seeing if we can nail more exclusive and pinpoint some more specific effects that could happen from Milton onto Florida. And yeah, just wish the best of luck for those in Florida, honestly, moving on forward with this, because I definitely have a good amount of friends there.
Yeah, definitely. I have some friends there as well, maybe some even family that I may or may not know about. You know, most of us don't know some family, maybe distant family. But for those that are in the path, once again, if you have loved ones or friends out there, make sure to warn them about this storm continuously. Keep them weather aware if they are not, and advise them to either evacuate or move farther inland, because if they're closer to the coast, they are at the highest threat for storm surge and high gusting winds.
Flooding and storm surge is always the worst thing. Water is the worst thing that can hit anybody. You can't do much about it, especially once it gets into your home. So.
Exactly.
All right, I think we'll call this a wrap. I don't see anything else from Facebook or YouTube. YouTube don't even sound right at talking about the news. I don't know what you're saying about that. Anyways, yeah, I think that's it from Facebook and YouTube. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you again with more updates here for tomorrow. Appreciate you guys, always your support on KSLA News 12 First Alert Weather Breakdown. Thank you again, CJ.
Of course.
Happy
I'm glad to be here.
Happy Tuesday to you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Meanwhile, you enjoy the rest of yours. Enjoy the sunshine here locally again. Low humidity's back out. Feels a lot more like fall. Might get a pumpkin spice drink. We'll see.
Maybe.
We'll see. Anyways, you have a great rest of your day. See you tomorrow. Bye.
See ya.